Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another study of the Rebbe's talk. We're studying from the book of selections from Likutei Sichos, the portion of Vayishlach, and we're studying the third talk of the Rebbe. Just an overview. In this week's Torah portion, we read about Yaakov, Jacob, wrestling with an angel. Who is that angel? It was the minister for Esau that came to try and hurt Yaakov and eradicate him. But Yaakov is a bit stronger than that minister, and he was able to hold him back. And this angel wants to leave, and Yaakov is not letting him. So he touched a nerve down in his thigh, and Yaakov was limping because that was hurting. But in addition, Yaakov he asked him to bless him before he leaves. And the angel says to him, "What's your name?" He says, "Yaakov." He says, "Yaakov is not going to remain your name. Your name is going to change to Israel." And that's why we call Bnei Israel the children of Israel, named after Yaakov Avinu. Later on, God appears to Yaakov in this week's Torah portion, and he repeats the same blessing. Your name is not going to be called Yaakov anymore, but Israel will be your name. But there's something peculiar about this name, where comparing to another time God changed someone's name, the requirements and the way we relate to the names is different. And this is the topic of our discussion. I'm starting to read. This week's Torah reading relates how God changed Yaakov's name, declaring God himself, not just the angel, but later on God, your name will no longer be Yaakov. Instead, your name will be Israel. Our sages compare this verse with the verse regarding Abraham Avinu. Your name will no longer be Abraham. Instead, it will be Abraham, and state that a person who refers to Abraham by the name Abraham commits a transgression. For it is written, your name will no longer be Abraham. In other words, when it comes to Abraham, the same words appear. God says to him, your name will not be any longer Abraham, but Abraham. The sages tell us if someone calls Abraham with the name Abraham, he is committing a sin, because God told us not to call Abraham, no longer be called Abraham. How come? Why then, ask our sages, does one not commit a transgression when he refers to Yaakov by that name, rather than by the name Israel? After all, it is also written, your name will no longer be Yaakov. How come we call children Yaakov? We call Jacob Yaakov even after God changed his name to Israel. God did not add a second name. God changed, and he says, no longer your name will remain Yaakov, but Israel will be your name. Yet we can call Yaakov. We can, as opposed to Abraham, you won't find a Jew naming his son Abraham. It's always Abraham. There's Avrum, there's Avrasha, but it's all a derivative of Abraham, not Abraham. When it comes, even the Muslims, they call it Ibrahim, not Ibrahim. When it comes to Yaakov, the name, the forefather in our Parsha, even though God says your name will no longer be Yaakov because it will change to Israel, we still call him Yaakov. And as I said, you have many children who are named Yaakov. Our sages explain that the renaming of Yaakov was different than the renaming of Abraham. From the time God gave Abraham his name, the Torah refers to him with that name alone. With regards to Yaakov, by contrast, even after God gave him the name Israel, the Torah continues to refer to him as Yaakov. So the rabbi explained the distinction between Abraham and Yaakov. After God changed his name, it will never refer to him. God will never call him by the old name, and therefore it's forbidden to call him that way. Yaakov, on the other hand, even after God says to him, no more your name will be Yaakov but Israel, we read that in the Torah, God refers to Yaakov as Yaakov. And if God calls him Yaakov, we are allowed to call him Yaakov. So in other words, Abraham names changed and he had to let go of the previous name. Yaakov's name changed, but we can still call him by the name of Yaakov, even though his name now is Israel. What is the rationale for this distinction? Why does the Torah still refer to Yaakov by that name, even after he was given the name Israel? Ask the Rebbe, why? Why Yaakov can be used? The fact that God is using it requires an explanation. In Hasidus, in Kabbalah, it is explained that the names Yaakov and Israel refers to two different modes of divine service. Every Jew must possess both traits. For there are times when a Jew must carry out his divine service in the path reflected by the name of Yaakov, and other times in which his divine service must reflect the path of Israel. Although Israel is a superior name, alluding to a loftier spiritual level, at certain times and in certain situations, the divine service of Yaakov is also necessary. Chassidut explained that Yaakov and Israel is alluding to two types of relationship we establish with God. Even though Israel is a much higher, loftier relationship, there are times, there are places where Yaakov is required. At times, Israel is required. And each person and each situation calls for a different type of relationship. That's why those names are still stuck with Yaakov, because it's not something to let go of. It's something that he lives with for the rest of his life, because it's an indication for his children and descendants and the Jewish people to relate to God on both levels. And this is the Rebbe's explanation. Anybody heard this concept before? No. Okay. The difference between the modes of service identified with Yaakov and Israel can be described as follows. The name Yaakov indicates that the blessing he received from Yitzchak were required through deception and trickery. Anybody is familiar with the story? Yaakov had to disguise himself. Yitzchak was suspicious, and he had to touch him, and he had to wear goat skin with the hair, so Yitzchak should sense as if he's touching his son Esau. So it's all about deception to receive the blessing. Through cleverness, Yaakov was able to snatch Yitzchak's blessing from Esau. That's Yaakov. Yaakov is receiving blessing, but how do you get the blessing? By trickery, by deception. Israel, by contrast, reflects a higher wrong. For Israel, there is no need to secure blessings by craftiness. Instead, they are granted them with nobility and in a revealed manner. Who is the one who named them Israel first? His arch enemy, is Esau's minister. And the minister is admitting to accepting that Yaakov's priority, and therefore he's giving him the blessings. He's blessing. In other words, now he's not deceiving anybody. He's coming through the main door, and he appears, and everybody turns heads and say, you deserve the blessings. So it's the exact opposite of what Yaakov. By the way, it is also in the names. Yaakov means Yud Akev. He's holding the heel. Heel is the lowest part of the body, meaning deception. It refers to hiding and disguising, because it's the Akev. It's the part that has no energy, no blood much. That's why it doesn't hurt for the entire body to stand on. Israel is Yesh Rosh, from the word Rosh Li. Israel is made out of two words, Rosh Li, to me, a head. In other words, reflecting the head, which is the exact polar opposite of what the heel is. So Yaakov talks about the heel. Israel talks about the head. Says the Rebbe, as the Rebbe will play it out in many, many levels, as many as we can today, that it's two types of service of God, two types of relationship with God that all must be played out at certain times, certain situations, certain people, as we will discover. That's why Yaakov's name is remaining Yaakov and Israel, because sometimes service to God is through deception and disguising ourselves, and sometimes it's through the main door. I'm here, I deserve the blessing, I deserve to have a very healthy relationship. Yes, Harry?
I'm seeing negativism in this because we all play out our roles based on what God wants us to do. So if God would have wanted Yaakov to come out first, he would have. So since he came out second because of the pressure of the birthright, we had to do this. We had to buy the birthright. I don't think it was pure deception. I think it was done the right thing to do in order for us to be possibly Israel. I don't see any negativity in this. I just see a smart cleverness to get the blessing.
I am not sure about negativity. We can debate that, but I don't want to do that because I want to stay on the topic.
Deception.
I'm going to talk about deception and cleverness. In order for him to get the blessing, he had to disguise himself, right? He had to go through the back door, right? What's wrong with Rivka going to Yitzchak and say, I want you to know, Esav is a murderer and a rapist. Yaakov should get the blessing. Go through the main door. And the answer is, this is the answer. Because it is about a sign for the future generations. The Jewish people, in order for them to relate to God and to have a relationship, they are in both ways. A straight path, unbiased, unapologetic. This is who I am, and I have a very strong bond with God. But then there is another way, bonding with God through cleverness, deception. Myself as Simon Abani. So therefore, it had to have been done that way. That's one of the explanations, by the way. And that's why Yaakov's name remained within the Jewish people, because it's a path that we need to have to establish a channel to connect to God. The actions of the patriarchs are a sign for their descendants. Ma'aseh Simon Lebonim, as Harry said, providing Jews in every generation with guidance in the divine service. Many of the defining spiritual characteristics of Yaakov's mode of service are reflected in the story of his receiving the blessings his father intended for Esav, because Simon Lebanim, because what they did is something of an indication of our behavior and our conduct. The reason that Yaakov needed for cleverness and disguising himself in order for him to receive God's blessings is an indication that for us to connect to God and receive blessings must come through a deception, must come through a cleverness. And that's what the Rebbe is saying. This is the first one, Yaakov, the type of relationship of Yaakov. The meaning of a verse never departs from its straightforward interpretation. Thus, the blessings given to Yitzchak, to Yaakov, where he says to him, in other words, the Rebbe says you can interpret the verses in many, many ways, but the first way you interpret the verses is the simple way they are written. And when Yaakov is blessing Yitzchak is blessing Yaakov the following: the dew of the heavens and the fat of the earth refers to material prosperity, simply wealth, lots of money, big stock account, and a lot of richness in your home. To receive these blessings, Yaakov and Rivka were willing to take life-threatening risks to employed various forms of deception. Yaakov feared that if his father will discover that is deception, he will curse them and he will suffer greatly. Yet they were willing to take the chance for the sake of receiving blessing. What kind of blessing? Wealth, physical wealth. For example, Yaakov had to wear the clothes that Esav had taken from Nimrod, even though Nimrod had caused the entire world to rebel against God with his kingship. What was the purpose of these tactics? to extract the sparks of godliness contained in these material entities and to elevate them to holiness. Yaakov, when Rivka tells Yaakov to dress up and go slaughter two goats, a pair of goats, she says to him, I have the special garments of Esau that he entrusted only with me. He didn't trust his wives. I want you to wear those garments. What's so unique about it? That's in the text, right? Et bigdei chamudot asher ita babayit. She had kept it for Esau as a guard. She says, go and dress up with him. What kind of garments they wore? Nimrod, the first king that rebelled against the entire universe against God, had these garments that, according to Medrash, Harry got it from Adam. It was the garments that God created for Adam and Eve to protect Adam outside of Gan Eden from wild beasts. And those garments he was able to hunt for any animal he wanted.
Why did he take it when he went to his father?
What?
Take the on to his father for the blessing.
Who, Esau? I don't know. Maybe he didn't want to ask his mother. His mother was taking a nap. Who knows? Never explained. His mother was taking a nap and he honored his father and mother. But she takes the garments, she makes Yaakov dressed up in these garments. In other words, he has to disguise himself in someone who is a murderer and someone who rebelled. He was able to turn the entire universe against God. That's Nimrod. When Abraham is trying to fight Nimrod, he puts him into a fire pit. In other words, Abraham was the biggest arch enemy of Nimrod. Yet Yaakov has to get dressed in these defiled types of garments. What the reason? The reason is because to receive those sparks that are found in the lowest of the law, and that can only happen through the garments of Nimrod. And that's the idea of deception, as we will discover in a moment. This serves as a lesson for us in our divine service. A Jew must approach eating, drinking, and other material activities with a certain measure of craft and deception. How does a person perpetrate a fraud? He does not reveal his true intent. He begins by appearing to follow the path which his opponent desires. But at a crucial point, he changes course and does what he desires, although it is against the other's wishes. In other words, what is deception? Make you believe that I'm on your side. Going to his opponents and saying, I'm with you. You want me to party? We're going to go party. You want me to pray and eat? Do you want me to eat and drink and be married? Marrying? That's great. No problem. However, at a turning point, he turns around and he uses it for the service of God. He says, you know why I ate? So I can thank God, so I can study Torah. This is, we're not dealing with sin. I need you to understand. We're not dealing with deception of going with the evil forces and saying to them, I'm on board with you, and committing a sin, cheating, lying, in non-kosher food, violating God's commandments. Not acceptable. That's not. We're talking about unallowed activities like eating, drinking kosher with blessings before. However, the evil inclination, the other side thinks you're getting dressed up with the garments. So you're on my side. I'm going to feed you. I'm going to make you have a good time. I'll make you forget about God. But Yaakov, has in mind totally different. At a certain point, he will split and go the opposite direction. This is the way a Jew should approach material activities. On the surface, he is involved in material activities like everyone else. He eats, drinks, and deals in commerce and the like. However, he engages in these activities for the sake of heaven, not for any material purpose at all, not for grandeur, not to be famous, not to show off, not to have more than the neighbor. He does it so he can support his family, so he lives a healthy life, so he's able to enjoy God's blessings. He wears Esau's clothes but carries out all his material activities with a sense of inner purpose, to extract the sparks of godliness contained in these material entities and elevate them to holiness. So why does he do that? Because there are sparks, holy sparks. As anybody is familiar with Kabbalah, there were 248 sparks that fell down into the universe, and our goal is to elevate them, to bring them back to God. As time go by, they split into many, many small sparks. So in the food, in drinking, in sleeping, in material pleasure, allowed pleasure or allowed food, allowed activities, the commerce, for example, there are sparks. Every time I engage those sparks and I utilize it for God's sake, I've elevated them to holiness. So you get dressed up in Nimrod's outfit, you get involved in commerce, you get involved in social activities, communal affair, eating, drinking, and you do it looks like a goy, like an un-Jew for its own sake. But in essence, the intention is to elevate the sparks to serve God. So then that's called deception. That's called cleverness, where you allow the evil inclination to believe that you are on the same side as he is, and you do engage in the same activities, except you do it for a different purpose, and at a certain point you split out. So that's Yaakov. The divine service of Israel, the second one, is quite different. The blessings for material prosperity granted him are conferred upon him with nobility and in a revealed manner. In other words, here he does not need to live by or take the same techniques or behavior of the evil, but he is a holy man, distinct holiness, different than the rest of the universe. He does not have to conceal the godly intent of his material involvement, for material concerns do not create a conflict for him. For him, there is no concealment of the godly source. To cite an example, the Rabbi bring an example. By simply eating his Shabbat meal, a Jew is performing a mitzvah. This is different from the task of refinement which he performs during the week. During the week, a Jew practices deception every time he performs a physical activity for a spiritual purpose. He eats, but it is with the deception, because he is eating for the sake of heaven, to elevate the food to its source in holiness. And Shabbat, by contrast, the physical activity of eating itself reflects holiness. Says the Rebbe, on Shabbat you become Israel. You don't have Yaakov. During the week when you eat, let's use eat, drink, commerce, all kinds of activities, you do it just like everybody else does it. And the evil might be deceived to think that you are on their side. However, you need to have the intention to do it for God's sake. I'm eating food so I maintain my body. That's a gift God gave me. So I'm able to socialize and help people. So I'm able to influence people to live a happy life. That's during the week. If you did not have that intention, you did not receive the blessings from the holiness. On Shabbat, on the other hand, there is no need for an intention. When you eat physical activity, it is a connection to God. When you drink, it is a physical connection to God without the intention. That's why Shabbat, Oneg b'Shabbat, is a mitzvah. Oneg Shabbos. How do you do Oneg Shabbos? How do you celebrate Shabbat? How do you connect to God? By eating good food. Extra challah, extra cholent. According to many, you do not count calories on Shabbat. You're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to calculate on Shabbat, right? Cheshbon is forbidden on Shabbat. Calculation is forbidden.
Right.
That's why you don't count calories. Well, after Shabbat, you will count it. But like happens to me many times, you can't eat for another 36 hours. But while it's Shabbat, the more you eat, did I tell you the story about the man that helped the rabbi? I shared that story on a Friday night many years back. There was a man that helped the rabbi for a great mitzvah, a mitzvah of redeeming the captive. And the rabbi turned to him and says, "You made my day." I'm very impressed because he was a very simple Jew. And the rabbi turned to him and says, what kind of gift do you want? So the man says, Rabbi, I do not keep Shabbat. And I envy you because I see when you walk by the street to synagogue on Shabbat, Friday night and Shabbat, I see the joy. Are you beaming? The ray of light that comes out of you, it's Shabbat. You're so joyous and so happy. Can you bless me with this type of feeling? I should feel the Shabbat the way you do. And the rabbi says, are you sure that's what you want? And he says, yeah. He said, sure, no problem. So during the week, he was cursing and fighting his wife, and his children ran away from him. The ordinary, average man in Poland at the time. Then comes Friday at noon. Noon arrives, 12 or noon. He turns to his wife, he says, Bela, we have got to mop the floor because Shabbat is coming. She says, well, what do you mean mop the floor? He says to her, you don't want it? I'll do it. And he started mopping the floor. This is a new man. She didn't have such a man. He says to her, Bela, here is money. Whatever saving I'm breaking the bank, you go and buy the nicest, biggest fish for Shabbat. And I want a nice challah. Tell me, what do you need? I'm here to serve you. I'll help clean up afterwards. I'll wash the dishes. Just make us a good meal. And she's driven up the wall from him, but she does. He's the man of the house. She prepares a nice meal, and then he tells the children, we have 1 hour. Shower right away. Shower because Shabbat is coming. And he's so excited for Shabbat. And just before Shabbat comes in, he holds his children. They are all dressed up. And he really enjoys the experience, like the rabbi. And he goes to synagogue. And he comes back, he does not allow politics, he does not allow to speak about activities and business. All Torah. You children don't have a Torah message, you have to listen to Torah messages. He didn't have enough, his wife helped him, but he promised that next week, next Shabbat, you'll have enough Torah messages. He tells them, the kids, that he'll give them treats for saying Torah messages. It becomes a holy place. The kids are going mad, the wife has no idea what hit them. And the whole Shabbat is so up there like in heaven. Comes Saturday night, he takes off his Shabbat clothing, and it's the same Moshka that was before Shabbat. He yells and screams, he raises his hand, he raises his voice. He takes drinks and he runs out with the hooligans, and when he comes home, he curses his wife, he hates her. And everything he built up for Shabbat is gone. Same story. Comes Friday afternoon. Bela, go by. I don't care. And they have a very special Shabbat. However, the dynamic, the shift from Shabbat to weekday was so dramatic that it was having an impact on his mental stability. After 3 weeks of that wishy-washy coming back and forth, his wife says to him, you're going to go into the madhouse pretty soon because your mind is going to blow up. You're going to lose a fuse there because it's too much on an extreme. So he goes to the rabbi. And before he started, the rabbi told him, I warned you, I told you. So he goes to the rabbi and says, I'm unable to. I can't take that. So the rabbi says to him, I can do one of the two. Either I can take away that blessing and you continue living a life of violating Shabbat, and there is no difference between Thursday and Shabbat. Or I can bless you. In the week, you will have a glimpse of Shabbat. So you would be a little respectful of your wife, and you care a little more about your children, wake up on time, and keep your mouth shut when it starts vomiting, words. And thank God it made the right choice, and it influences weekday. In other words, Shabbat and weekday, our service of God are totally opposite. On Friday, on the weekday, our service of God in this physical material world, to be granted blessings of the fatness of the earth and the dew of the heavens, which is physical bounty, comes to what we call deception. What does deception means? You eat and drink, you go into your commerce and do all activities just like Isa, just like the opposite of holiness. You get dressed with Nimrod's outfit. However, when the critical moment comes, you part ways. You say, I'm doing it for God's sake. I'm doing it to serve God, and you do it just for that purpose. And Shabbat, on the other hand, you don't need that. Shabbat is Israel. Shabbat is not Yaakov. Shabbat is a time when there's no deception. I can tell the truth. I'm eating for God's sake. I'm drinking. Even if you had no intention, you do it for God's sake. By the way, that will explain many, many questions about Shabbat and vis-a-vis the weekdays. That's why when Shabbat leaves, when Shabbat is over, there is many Hasidim say, Al tira Yaakov, do not fear Yaakov. It's part of the prayer of Saturday evening. Chabad Hasidim don't say it. And the reason is because now you go back to the world of Yaakov. Until now, you're Israel. And Yaakov fears, as we read in the Torah, he feared that Yitzchak will find out and curse him. In other words, the fear is that the intention is not going to be there, and then we are becoming, it's a curse, it's not a blessing. And that's why we are told, don't fear. Israel has infused you with so much positivity that even the weak will be influenced.
Don't fear Israel or don't fear Yaakov?
Don't fear Yaakov. Al tira Yaakov.
Okay.
It's a famous prayer.
No, you said.
Because Yaakov now is entering into the human being. This concept at the bottom of page 438, this concept is alluded to by Yaakov being given the name Israel, which was granted to him because you have shown mastery with angels and men and prevailed. Angels and men both refer to challenges involving the concealment of godly influence. Angels refer to the 70 spiritual archangels who serve as the channels through which the divine influence that maintains material existence passes through this process of spiritual descent. Godliness becomes veiled. In other words, when he says, when the angel blesses Yaakov, he says to him, because you're able to wrestle with angels and God, and you prevailed, referring the angels, referring to the 70 angels, which are the channels that bring godliness into the universe, into existence into the universe. Israel is over that, is above it. In other words, his connection to the universe is in a non-biased way, without any bypassing. It goes through no change of clothes, no deception, just directly enjoying God's blessings and connecting to God. The next topic, the next point the Rabbi says, that's why in the blessings, I believe, of it's not blessing, it is a who says that? 15. The rabbi is explaining that the difference between weekday and Shabbat it is Israel, and on weekday is Yaakov, is not necessarily all the time this way. It also depends on the part of the soul. Sometimes the part of soul that shines is the lowest part of the soul, which refers to Yaakov. Sometimes the highest part of the soul, which is Israel. And therefore, says the Rebbe, you have two types of relation to Shabbat, to God. One, which you have the essence of the soul, which is revealed without deception, without hiding it. And there are times you have to go through a deception. It's the difference, says the Rebbe, between a Baal Teshuvah and a Tzaddik. A Baal Teshuvah takes negativity and turns it into holiness. but at the time he was involved with very negative activity, except he turned it away. So he was part and connected, dressed with Nimrod outfit. A tzaddik never had to deal with negativity, is always holy. And this is why, says the Rebbe, happiness instead of fear, page 444. Based on the above, we can appreciate the implication of the liturgical hymn sung on the Melave Malka meal on Saturday night. We sing, "Do not fear Yaakov, my servant." As explained in Likutei Torah, over there on Shabbat, the Jewish people are on the level of Israel. Then there is no need for strenuous efforts to refine the world's material substance, because you go like Israel, you go directly. As the Shabbat departs, however, Jews must once again make the transition to the level of Yaakov, my servant, resuming their mission of refining material entities in the 6 weekdays that follow. Therefore, every Jew is then assured from above, do not fear Yaakov, my servant, just like Rivka told Yaakov, do not fear. He is told not to fear, to descend to the level of Yaakov, my servant. So Yaakov is called servant. Servant, it's a lower type of relationship to God, where Israel is a son. These words are more than a charge not to be fearful. They are empowering, providing a person with the strength to proceed without fear and carry out his divine service with happiness. This happiness, in turn, makes the person's task easier and hastens its completion, enabling him to see generous recompense for his efforts, including the ultimate reward, the coming of the era, which is all Shabbat and rest for life everlasting. Says the Rebbe, that's why we tell him, don't fear, because you get the energy from Shabbat, and that will spill over and affect the rest of the week. And that's why on Shabbat, on the world to come, in time of Mashiach, we call it Shabbat. Shabbat will be there forever. Why? Because on Shabbat, we are the level of Israel, not Yaakov. We don't have to deceive. We don't have to be clever in our relationship to God and deceive the evil. There is no evilness. There is only good. It's only the Israel. Now we understand why by Abraham, we're not allowed to call him by the previous name, but when it comes to Yaakov, we do call both names, because both names at this point are needed in the service of God. There are times where we choose, or we are told to follow Yaakov, to have the intention and to deceive the evil. And there are times when we call it Israel, no deception. Whatever we do, however we do, is directly connected to God. And this is a powerful lesson from this week's Torah portion.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a good Shabbos, everybody.
That's correct. Thank you.